Hello, everybody. Welcome to Sports Scope. I'm your host, Robert Butler, on this ninth day of January 2023. I know we got the national championship game coming on right now, and kudos to the networks for actually putting this on at a decent hour, even though it actually is played in Southern California. When I saw that they were going to play at 6:30 Central Time, 7:30 Eastern, I figured that the actual kickoff wouldn't be till way after the top of the hour, if not the next hour. And the truth of the matter is, this team, they kicked off around 10 minutes till the hour. And I noticed that Georgia is up 7-0. It's still very early. Both teams seem a little nervous. I'm going to, when I get off here, watch this game. This time last week, we had the horrific tragedy here. But we'll see how it plays out. I'm just glad. I hope that other TV executives, folks, see what they see tonight as far as the ratings. Do not put these games on at 9 o'clock Eastern, 10 o'clock Eastern. Put these games on around 7:30, 7:45 Eastern. I do think you'll still get a West Coast audience. A lot of East Coast people have to, at Central Time Zone, people like myself have to get up early in the morning. We cannot stay up past midnight to watch a football game. As much as I love this sport, I'll record it and I'll go to bed and I'll watch the rest of it in the morning, like I did the Detroit and Green Bay game. I found that out at about 4 o'clock this morning when I woke up. Got a lot I want to talk about tonight, including that particular game. What's the future for Aaron Rodgers? Black Monday so far. I'm 2 for 2 on the firings as far as calling Black Monday, including another big game was also one of the biggest games of the week. Tennessee Titans firing their offensive coordinator. I'll talk about that, who they should possibly go after in the early news of that and how they should go about it. But first, we'll take about a minute 19, get a quick commercial break in here, and I'll be back here in a minute and 19 here on Sports Scope. Hello, Sports Scope followers. After 5 years of doing this program once a week, balancing a 60-hour work week job, I've decided to do the program 5 days a week, 1 hour a night, taking a significant pay cut. So I've started a Patreon page, which is Patreon, Patreon/SportsScope, spelled the same way at the bottom of the screen you see there. For $5 a month, 17 cents a day, you can help support the program. You ask yourself, why Sports Scope? Well, I bring in such big names such as Al Borges, former Auburn offensive coordinator, and I cover the big news in sports that the corporate media will not cover. If you want to contribute more than $5 a month, you can go use the Cash App. The cash tag is Sports Scope, again, spelled the same way. Or you can go to the Zelle app, sportscope@gmail.com. SportsScope has about 5,000 followers and growing. If you want to advertise on the program, you can email me. The word is SportsScope, spelled the same way again, at gmail.com. Thank you and enjoy the program. Alrighty, here, down, back live on all links. So, yeah, let's talk about that game. Yeah, so the Packers' inconsistencies on offense basically come back to haunt them in this year's biggest game at home, essentially a win and you're in. They held Detroit to 300 yards, 2 turnovers. Really cost them, miscues between Aaron Rodgers, and his wide receivers. Now, I know that Christian Watson had 4 catches for 100 yards, 2 targets for Dobbs, nothing. Detroit really shut that running game down. Detroit's best cornerback was even out of that game. And Green Bay still couldn't get it done. And on top of all that, their second leading tackler gets himself thrown out of the game for shoving a trainer. Think about this. He shoves a trainer. This Quay Walker, rookie guy from Georgia, linebacker, shoves a trainer for attending to DeAndre Swift because the trainer kind of nudged him to get out of the way so he can look at Swift here. Less than a week after a guy has a heart attack on the field. Of course, he gets kicked out of the game. Then this other guy, Devontae White, on the same sequence, he also gets a personal foul penalty that puts the ball first and goal. Next drive, of course, Detroit scores a touchdown there. Next drive, Aaron Rodgers throws a lame duck, picked off by Walker, picked off. That first-round pick, by the way, thrown out of the game. Jimmy Johnson, I'm reading his book. He says, I do not want dumb players on my team. He later admitted that was a stupid – yeah, he later apologized on Twitter, go figure, that was a dumb play, and it cost his team the game. But that being said, hey, man, they just could not get nothing going here. Rodgers is hinting at retirement now. Said it may be his last game. He is, like I said, the team's been hot the last few games, beating Miami, beat Minnesota, blew them out. Rodgers already hinted at retirement preseason. But you know what? I was thinking he should think long and hard about the about doing so. You know, if you look at it, the chemistry really picked up the last month between him and maybe 6 weeks. Him and Christian Watson here, which was a rookie. But, you know, it's hard to depend on him and Romeo Doubs, two rookies in big playoff, intense game situations like that. Watson ran the wrong route on the last play. And, you know, it is what it is. He didn't get enough work in these guys in the preseason. And it's simply – and they got beat. And Detroit, to their, credit, you know, they played really well. Their offensive line kept such a clean pocket for Jared Goff. Looks like you could eat off that thing, man. But going back to Green Bay, I'll give Detroit their praise here in just a minute. They're slightly over the cap next year. Rodgers got a $31 million cap hit, but they've got the 15th overall pick, the 45th, and the 78th pick. They hit on their picks. You think about it. That linebacker, he might be a knucklehead, Quay Walker, for Green Bay, but, you know, he's out there playing really well for them. Christian Watson, he's playing really well for them right now. Their wide receiver, Doubs, is still a little rough around the edges, but that team didn't look too bad on the defensive side of the ball. He needs another offseason, another year's work. And I was reading this. This is from overthecap.com because he said something like Jameis Williams, the rookie wide receiver from Alabama that's playing with Detroit, he's asking Rodgers for his jersey. And Aaron says, well, I can't give it to you this one, not this particular one. So he's hinting at retirement. But I was reading this over the cap. If he retires, this overthecap.com, he were to walk away and forfeit the rights of $59 million in guaranteed salary for next year in order to best accommodate the hit on the salary cap. The assumption would be that the Packers and Rodgers would sign a new contract where the option bonuses were eliminated, just $1.6 million. That would reduce his cap charge to $16 million. That will carry him a roster procedure until June the 2nd. A lot of this sounds like mumbo jumbo, but it would work out good for both parties if he simply comes back. Now, he'll be 40 next year. I get it. He'll be 40 years old, but he needs to take some time, reflect, and the truth of the matter is they've got a pretty healthy offensive line. They had plenty of chances to win that game. They had plenty of chances to win plenty of other games this year. They're just a tick off with that receiving core. I stay in there, and I could get I would actually get that money, man. And plus, appreciate it, Corey. And plus, you know, they're going to be a good team next year. You know, they're good on the cornerback. They're pretty good on pass rusher. They've been terrible at linebacker for years. other than this Quay Walker doing an idiotic thing that he did, shoving that trainer, he's also got thrown out of the Buffalo game. He admits that he's got to keep his emotions in check. And yeah, Pickle says there's no locker room control. I just read that the Packers are going to keep both their offensive coordinator and their defensive coordinator. I would probably try to get a little bit more speed at wide receiver, maybe a little bit more speed at the running back position, maybe try to do something with Aaron Jones if I can deal him and get a faster guy to kind of back up, because I know Dillon is on his rookie contract. There's a lot this team could do. They simply need to take time and reflect and do it. Give it one more year. It's going to hurt the Packers big time if he walked away this year. And quite frankly, if I'm Rodgers, why don't I want my last play being a duck pass like that underthrown pass, looked like he was throwing up into the air like it was a punt, to end this way. The flip side. So, I mean, like I said, they've got the 15th, the 45th, and the 78th pick. This team traditionally, other than Jordan Love, and maybe Jordan Love might be a hit too, they drafted well in the past. You know, it's not as dire as it seems. On the flip side, Detroit. You know, sometimes you just got to change your way of thinking. And sometimes you have to dig into a certain mindset that is different from the mindset we've had, whether we've had a defeated defeated spirit. I've had a defeated spirit when I'm going through down times in my life where things just didn't seem to be working out. And I've had to change that mindset. Whether I had to make it up in my head, stop talking to people who are negative, stop listening to negative voices, change my routine on the way to work, change my routine and everything. And that's what I think Dan Campbell has done. This head coach of Detroit, that's what I think he has done with this team. You know, I think he has not let this team, when something bad happened to the Lions this year, and they've had quite a few bad moments here. They were 1-6 to start it. They fired their secondary coach. They shored up their defense from a secondary perspective. They have a bye week, then they get blown out at Dallas. They could have fell into the toilet there. No, Dan Campbell says you will not be losers here. You will not be losers. I'm going to lift you up. We're not going to fall for that same spell of being defeated in spirit that we are. And that's what I think he's done with this. They finished 9-8. You know, it's the first time they've had a winning record since 2017. This team, they've got an offensive line that has pockets so clean that you could eat off of them. Like I said early, really hit it out of the park with Penei Sewell, Taylor Decker, their left tackle there, their inner left guard, right guard. They're just punching guys off the ball. They're almost as good as Philadelphia as far as the offensive line is concerned. They got $28 million in cap space. They got Goff, who's had the league's highest QBR, Jared Goff, since week 10. He's a $31 million cap hit. If they release him, they could save $20 million. I doubt if they release him. I think they're going to keep this guy. My guess is they keep him. You know, he just won't. And then on top of all that, they've got the 6th pick, which is the Rams pick. The Rams got beat by Seattle. Seattle gets into the playoffs. I'll talk about them tomorrow. There's so many stories, folks. I couldn't get to all of them today. I simply could not get to all of them today. But anyways, so they have the 6th pick overall, and they've got the 18th pick. With that 6th pick, we've got a national championship. If Jalen Carter, if they can find a way to get him, defensive lineman out of Georgia, he might not be there, but they got a good chance maybe to get Will Anderson from the Alabama. One of those defensive linemen. They could get Ringo. He's a cornerback from Georgia. There's quite a few players there they can get with 6 and 18. Me personally, I would go defense and defense. They got Amon St. Brown, true number 1 receiver. Jameis Williams, true number 2. DJ Shark, maybe he comes back. I like Brock, this Brock guy they got at tight end. They just need help at linebacker. They need help at cornerback. They need help at interior defensive lineman. They've got a great pass rusher. Maybe put another guy opposed to that pass rusher. And listen to this. They could be favorites. Brock Wright, Pickles, thank you. That's their tight end. They could be favorites to win the NFC North. Little Game of Thrones. They could be king of the North. They could, because Minnesota's falling apart. They're overpaying Kirk Cousins. They're busted on the cap. They got one great player on defense, and that's a safety. You know, Zadarius Smith is okay. They're more fool's gold, if you ask me. Detroit split with them this year. They swept the Packers this year. They were learning how to get out of that defeated spirit. This was a transition for this is year 2. This is the big transition from Detroit, from being losers for so long to thinking about winning again. You know, they still got a really good running back on a rookie contract here. They traded away a tight end and still got Brock Wright here doing well. They've actually got Minnesota's second round pick. Now that I mention it, an in-divisional pick. So Detroit's got a lot to be optimistic about. I never thought I'd be talking about Detroit in the first 15 minutes of the program. But hey, Dan Campbell, he went for the jugular, called went for it on 4th down. Really good play call there. Their offensive coordinator is going to get interviewed for head coaching jobs, of what I'm reading now. We've had a couple of openings come open. I'll tell you, I'll talk about them here in just a few minutes. But the Lions, they're no longer a laughingstock. If they can keep Aiden Hutchinson healthy, again, pick up a couple of defensive linemen around him, get some help at cornerback, they're no longer going to be a laughingstock. They're going to be the real deal, if you ask me. And Pickle says Bears get the number 1 pick, and yeah, they got the number 1 pick, and also got the most money in cap room. The Bears right now currently have about $114 million in cap space. That's the most in the league, by practically double of anybody else that's even close. They've got the number 1 pick. I'll get to the Bears later on this week. I may get to the Bears tomorrow. This Bears team has they have an option. They may just simply trade Justin Fields and draft Bryce Young out of Alabama. That's the kind of credit options that they have. You know, Big Camp. He says the Big Lebowski. Thank you, Corey. Good to see you, man. Amen. Sports Scope. Thank you, sir. And so it is what it is. A lot of optimism for both teams. If I'm Rodgers, again, I would not retire on that note. I would give it one more shot because I think things are going to get a lot better. Remember, that team lost their leading receiver last year. He contemplated retirement. You got this youth. You got some youth there on defense. You got some speed there. You got some youth there at receiver. You've had your an offensive lineman coming back from a major injury, left tackle. You also had your tight end, Robert Tonyan, coming back from major injury too. They'll be 2 years back from those injuries. Next year could be a lot better for Packers from a whole team standpoint. That's what I tell Aaron Rodgers. So going to be an interesting offseason. Love the offseason just as much as I love the regular season. Okay, there was another big game on Saturday night, folks. Titans lose another win. Win and you get in kind of game. They lost, of course. That was their 7th straight at Jacksonville last night. The Titans, that was a big game. It was in prime time. Really good crowd down there in Jacksonville. Titans are 7-10. They did play 3 quarterbacks this year. massive offensive line injuries. Second game losing. They lost their left tackle, Taylor Lewan, who's only played, like I said, half of his games in the last 3 years. That being said, offense looks very predictable, foolish at times, considering the team has getting no punch on the offensive line. They're 30th in total yards, 27th in points. They fired their offensive coordinator today, Todd Downing. They also fired their secondary coach. Tennessee is either between 31st and 32nd pass defense. They can't move the ball on offense. Downing looked good at times. I like some of his schemes. I'm not totally down on him. I'm not as down on him as, say, I was like a Jeff Fisher type of offense that this team, but that's not saying much because Jeff Fisher, Eric Dickerson, former LA Rams, said Jeff Fisher ran a high school offense. But the Titans right now, so they fired Todd Downing. Now let me mention this about Downing. That's not the only reason I think he got fired. The fact that they're 30th in offense and those long drop back passes, you do not want to do 5-step drops when your team has an offensive line as bad as Tennessee. And he kept calling that, and basically the Titans lost this game off of a sack strip fumble for a touchdown, just like they lost a big sack strip fumble in the other game. It wasn't the touchdown, but the other time they played with two different quarterbacks, Ryan Tannehill and, of course, Josh Dobbs Saturday night. But, this is what Todd Downing, he also got a DUI after Tennessee's biggest win. Their last win of the season was pretty close to Thanksgiving. I think it was like a week before Thanksgiving. They go up to Green Bay on a Thursday night, get a big win here, fly back to Nashville, and a few hours later, he gets pulled over in Williamson County, Tennessee, just south of Nashville, about 15, 20 minutes. And he says people are trying to, he's in fear for his life. He's wanting to get home to his wife. He's fearing his life. It sounded like some really corny, lame duck story. Of course, the police didn't buy it. He gets a DUI. The Titans keep him on staff. He apologizes publicly till the very end of the season. Now, of course, they decided to go ahead and fire him. I think you add that plus the fact that the Titans were 30th in defense and total yard offensively, 27th in points scored. That's at the bottom 5 in both categories. And, but, again, the Titans, as I said on this program last week, and as I predicted, I thought Jacksonville would beat them. I thought that that they need to take a step back to take 2 steps forward. This team has major holes in their offensive line, even if they did have a healthy offensive line. Taylor Lewan making $14 million a year. This team's $19 million over the cap. If they cut him, that eliminates most of that. If they cut Taylor Lewan, which I expect them to do, that eliminates 14 of that $19 million. You've got the 11th pick in the draft. I thought maybe they would have a higher pick, but apparently they've lost some of those tiebreakers to the NFC South teams who also had 7th wins. But 11th pick is not bad. You got a shot, maybe the second or third best tackle on the board, maybe a right tackle, something of that nature. With that 11th pick, like I said, they've had some adjustments they can make on their cap to get under the cap. They're also looking for another general manager. I'm reading that they're bringing in assistants from San Francisco. I would want to check with Baltimore, Pittsburgh, Green Bay, someone like that who has a long time of drafting well and development of players, in my personal opinion. I'll get to some of these replacements probably on Thursday. I'll get it maybe Wednesday, maybe Thursday. Get into a little bit more names and whatnot for replacement, especially as far as general managers are concerned. But I would want to go with maybe, let's see, maybe a Frank Reich, somebody like that, former Colts head coach. Bring in somebody to work with the quarterback, a former quarterback himself, played in NFL, newly fired head coach. Just because somebody got fired as a head coach, that doesn't mean that they're not a good coordinator. I think Cliff Kingsbury, who I predicted earlier, would be fired. I think he'd be a pretty good coordinator. Okay. There's a lot of good defensive guys that I think are just Brett Venables. Now, this is college, but Brett Venables of Oklahoma. He's a great defensive coordinator at Clemson. He's a terrible head coach. So somebody like Frank Reich, quite frankly, Matt Nagy, two former, I want to say both of these guys coached under Andy Reid. Andy Reid is very clever at keeping you off guard when it comes to red zone offense. That's where your money's made. I understand that he's got a talent like a Patrick Mahomes, but nobody was even talking about Patrick Mahomes when he was coming out of the draft. Nobody. He was a guy with a strong arm that was very raw out of Texas Tech. His coach was Cliff Kingsbury, but he couldn't mold that talent like Andy Reid. Andy Reid has molded that talent, and Randy Reid is very good in the red zone at jet sweeps, shuttle screens, hiking the ball directly to the running back or the tight end. They did do some of that with Derrick Henry. They did get Derrick Henry the ball on the flat more. It was just not enough, and I think the DUI hurt Todd Downing. But I would like to bring in one of these old school guys. If you could get a Norv Turner, somebody even older than that, that'd be great. Could you get a Gary Kubiak out of retirement at 61? I would love that. Neither one of those guys will probably come. They'll probably come. Jim Caldwell, love to get Jim Caldwell, former offensive coordinator for the Ravens when they won the Super Bowl in 2012. Also the head coach the last time the Detroit Lions had a winning record. Love to get those guys. He's not going to get any of these guys. You know, he's not going to get – I know what Vrabel's going to do. He's probably going to get somebody he's familiar with, maybe hire somebody in-house of that nature. What they need to do is concentrate more on getting the ball in the space, having more balance, not being so run heavy. And if you see a weakness on the offensive line, make that adjustment. Make that adjustment. You know, you get guys moving in the he like I said, Downey was doing better down the stretch. I think the main problem with him was he called too many drop back passes where the quarterback needed time to throw, and he simply could not have time to throw. It's your job as a coordinator to get the ball in different spaces on the field, use all of that real estate. Quite frankly, I'll say this: Matt Canada's done a good job as lately with Pittsburgh, you know, and maybe I'll talk about them tomorrow. But I like the way Kenny Pickett's coming along, making his decision. Guys like that, using guys in the flat, shovel passes, swing passes, jet sweeps, things you can do behind the line of scrimmage to get the ball moving without having to rely on your offensive line getting that push like a good Philadelphia team has, okay? Like a good Kansas City team has, or a Cincinnati who's got good push up front, you know? I was reading something the other day. Teams that put more money in their offensive line, Philadelphia, for example, Kansas City, what a coincidence. They just happen to be the number one seeds. Now, I understand that you have a super talent in Patrick Mahomes. And you got but Jalen Hurts was a second-round pick. I've been waiting for him to fall off. I do have an opinion about him that's not so flattering of the Philadelphia fan base. I'll get to that in a minute. But my point is, two teams that put a lot of money in that unit in the offensive line. Now, I'm reading this Jimmy Johnson book. Now, Jimmy Johnson, in his day, he says he wouldn't take offensive line really early. He says Now, this was back in the day before the new rules came in where you couldn't do two-a-days. But he says he wanted guys to score touchdowns early. He would get those guys in the later part of the draft, offensive linemen, as long as they were smart football players. And he, particularly the offensive line, because they have to hear the snap, because they have to be in sync with each other, because their timing has to be right. They have to outthink the defensive line because the defensive line's a better athlete. They have to outthink them. So that's what he says. He would get guys in the later rounds that he knew were very smart football players that he put on his offensive line, according to Jimmy Johnson. But my thing is, after 2010, when you couldn't do two-a-days, when practicing got limited in that CBA agreement, which the NFL has kept with the Players Association, offensive line play has went downhill. Plus, you're adding in more spread in college. It seems like teams are putting more effort into spending more and drafting higher at that position for better molded players in the NFL. That since 2010, Johnson's been out of the league since like the early 2000s, like 2000, I think, since he's retired. So maybe I'll get him on now and I finish this book. I'm going to get my car, get some routine oil change and tire rotation on Saturday. I'm going to get into deeper in this book, and I'm going to try to finish it and be able to try to reach Jimmy Johnson to see if he can come on the program. I was asking him, would you still have that same approach nowadays, considering the fact that offensive line are not getting the practice time that they normally get in back in your day, 22 to 23 years ago? It's just food for thought. But so Titans, yeah, go out and get an older guy, get one of the Andy Reid cast-offs. That's what I would do. Get a Jim Caldwell type. If you're going to go in-house, get somebody that works at a faster pace and keeps his team moving. I think Vrabel will make the right decision. Quite frankly, as far as his replacements, for the most part, I think he's made the right decisions. I think this team has just simply fell apart. He was not on the same page with John Robertson. So we got to find out who this team is going to bring in a general manager to come work with him, and hopefully he being Mike Vrabel, will not get that final say in Pickles. Will not get that final say in. Pickles says, Stanford, Northwestern, tons of offensive linemen from Stanford, Northwestern. Northwestern has the best offensive line in the draft, according to Pro Football Focus, coming out this year. Last year, Slater, one of the better offensive linemen, maybe year before last, did a really good job. Now, he got hurt, but he was doing a good job with this Charger team, you know. But anyways, on the flip side, Jacksonville, that was also the Saturday night game. They've won 6 of 7, beaten Tennessee. They beat Baltimore, a playoff team. They beat Dallas, also a playoff team, down the stretch. They're really getting good pass rush with Josh Allen, the pass rusher from Kentucky, not the quarterback, and Trayvon Walker, the former number 1 overall pick in his rookie year. Jacksonville's had the number 1 pick 2 years in a row, folks. Eventually, things are going to get better for Jacksonville, okay? Trevor Lawrence, 25 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. Doug Peterson, head coach there, has done a really good job helping him get rid of the ball quicker, tightening up his stances. Christian Kirk had the big play this week. Zay Jones a few weeks ago. Evan Ingram, kind of a cast-off from the Giants. He's playing well. Guys like Jamal Agnew, unsung hero, getting him the ball in space. They get to play the Chargers on Saturday night. I'll break this game down with Carlos on Friday night's program, but I'll say this. This Charger team, they went on the road and they played Denver, played 3 quarters. Denver, I don't know why Brandon Staley did that, but he played his starters 3 quarters in a meaningless game, and Mike Williams hurt his back in that game. Then he pulls them out. Then they fly back to L.A. today. Then on Saturday, on a short week, they've got to fly all the way down to Jacksonville and play at Jacksonville this Saturday night. Going to be a great game. They're actually early favorites in that game. But if you look at this, again, guys like Josh Allen, Trayvon Walker, the quick release there of Trevor Lawrence, this team is going to be good from years to come. They're also a team that's got cap room. Lawrence is on his rookie deal still. He's in his second year. He's made that big jump from year one to year two. He didn't look great Saturday. No, Tennessee played their best game defensively in spots. They were really playing well. But I tell you what, that's the loudest crowd I've heard in Jacksonville in years. I mean, that crowd, and I'm just listening to it on TV, guys, but that crowd in Jacksonville was sounded like the Jaguars did in the late 90s with Mark Brunell in the early 2000s when they had Tom Coughlin, Mark Brunell. Remember, Mark Brunell was a MVP finalist in 99. The Titans beat them their only two losses. They were 14-2 that year. They had some big crowds down there. Now, Tennessee broke their hearts and won 3 straight. Last game down there was the NFC Championship to get into the Super Bowl, you know. But that's a lot. That crowd Saturday was reminiscent of those teams under Kaufman. With those Jaguar teams were playing really well. And, you know, like I said, Mark Brunell, Tom Coughlin, that team played really well. Kurt Warner ended up getting the had outstanding off the wall, you know, stats there. And when St. Louis at the time, we all know what happened. The Rams ended up winning that Super Bowl over Tennessee. But they got something going on. They got some energy going on for them. Yeah. Fred Taylor was really good at the time there. Former Florida running back. You had Jimmy Smith, I think, was the wide receiver. They had some players. They come up just short, but they did go to the playoffs in like 96, I think. Made a run and upset a good Denver team just before, and then the Denver team later went to the Super Bowl. Mark Schlereth talks about that. But they got some life down there. They've been another team that, you know, sometimes their games will be blacked out. Not a lot of people interested. But there's a big buzz going on down there, and good for them. Good for Detroit. Good for Jacksonville teams. That's what I like about the NFL, folks. You can go from the freaking outhouse to the penthouse in 1 year, maybe two. Look how good Cincinnati looks right now. You know, Cincinnati gets the raw end of the deal. I mean, they're beating Buffalo. You know, you have a tragedy on the field. A player has a heart attack, and you know, then now they got to play Baltimore again. They played Baltimore last week, played really well. Defense got a touchdown there. Now they play Baltimore again, and they're not going to get a shot at a 1 seed. But you know, they had the league of Buffalo. I think Buffalo's slightly better. But I would be surprised if Cincinnati didn't get back. Cincinnati, they got the talk of the town. They got the talk of the league with Joe Burrow. Playmakers like Jamar Chase. You know, got a really good defensive coordinator. A lot of people talking about him around the league. Just 3 years ago, they were 1-16, 1-15 or something like that. They had a joke of a head coach, a guy in Zach Taylor. They get the number 1 pick. They don't even have a practice. They don't even have an indoor practice facility. As soon as they get Joe Burrow, they get the indoor practice facility. They re-sign a guy like AJ Green, the rookie year of Joe Burrow. They wanted to show him that we are going to build around you because you're special. And you know what? He was. Then they get T. Higgins. They re-signed Tyler Boyd, really hard-working slot receiver. And then on top of that, when I thought they should have took Penei Sewell out of Oregon, then they get Jamar Chase from LSU. They got weapons for days. Last year in the draft, that was the year before last. Remember, last year they went to Super Bowl, right? Last year they go out and get Hayden Hurst at tight end. He made some big plays the last few games. So and then they upgraded their offensive line, Sound Line Collins out of Dallas. All of that because they got one pick, Joe Burrow. One pick. Before that, they were a laughing stock. They were going through coaches. How much trouble can they get in? They got guys like Vontaze Burfict getting kicked out of games, get suspended for foul play, unsportsmanlike conduct. You name it. Guys like Vontaze Burfict. They brought in former Tennessee Titan Pac-Man Jones. They had a player jump off of a car. What's his name? Henry. Chris Henry or something like that. He got killed running after his girlfriend on the truck. They've had just crazy, crazy stuff happen. But they got Joe Burrow. Now, 10, 12, 15 years before that, they did have another savior. His name was Carson Palmer. And when Palmer got hurt, when he got hurt in that 2005, 2006 divisional game, playoff game, it was a home game. I think it wasn't divisional round. It was a wild card game. And Pittsburgh knocked him out of the game, had a pretty bad knee injury. He was never the same. He wanted to get out of Cincinnati. He thought Cincinnati was bad. He was a Southern California guy. He wanted to retire or get out of Cincinnati. They finally trade him to the Raiders. Then he moves to Arizona. Savage saves his career. But this guy's better. He's better than Carson Palmer already. He's better than Palmer. They've had some guys like T.J. Houshmandzadeh, Chad Johnson, but for the most part, they were a laughingstock of the league. I'm talking to a guy at church here, Sunday, and he's just telling me, man, he says, we know what it's like not to have a quarterback. Trust me. He's like, maybe Boomer Esiason, but Palmer was only good for about a year or two until he got that injury, and he was never right, and he wanted to get the heck out of here. And I said, yeah, that's true, man. But this guy is he's Ohio native. But, you can go from bottom to the top just like that. It's hard to do that in Major League Baseball. It's hard to do that even in the NBA. Even when, Cleveland got LeBron. It took them a few years to get to the playoffs to start making a run, But in the NFL, you get that quarterback, and then things start to work out. And then you get that it's like a tidal wave. It's like an avalanche of good fortune. Now it can go the other way, avalanche of bad fortune, but they have it. And so, but Jacksonville was just like that. Now they look like they're on their way up. That's going to be a tough game for me to handicap on Saturday when they play the Chargers, because right now I feel like I kind of like Justin Herbert better, but I like what Jacksonville's got on their defensive line too. I like the fact that Jacksonville's playing at home. I like Doug Peterson better than I like Brandon Staley. Andre, good to see you, man. Titans come up short signing Save-A-Lot players. Yeah, that is true. I just talked about the Titans earlier, what they need to do. They have fired their offensive coordinator. I think they need to go out and get an older Frank Reich, somebody like that. But you just have to go back and listen to the program. Who was this other guy I said? Oh, hold on. I'll go ahead and say it. Let's see. Who did I say? I talked about them first because they, somebody like that, Matt Nagy, one of these Andy Reid disciples can kind of help them move the ball in small places and help the short passing game. Titans, going back to them, they've got a good tight end. Ekwonu, they've got some positive there. Ekwonu's a really good tight end. It's like a fourth-round pick. This guy's the best tight end they've had maybe since Frank Wadchek or Aaron Kenny. One of those guys. He may be better than those guys. He may be better than those two players. He may be a Njoku he may be better than David Njoku of the Cleveland Browns. So they got him. Treylon Burks, I think if you keep him healthy, I think he's going to be a pretty good wide receiver. So they got some play there. I like McCoy, even though he's getting burned a few times. That cornerback out of Auburn, I like him. Kevin Byard's a good player. Jeffrey Simmons, I'll re-sign. They've got pieces. It's not the end of the world. It feels like it. And maybe they got one of those offensive line they can keep. Most of them I wouldn't. Start with Lewan. But that's a story for a different day. Yeah, Kwanu. Pickle says Jim Caldwell would be perfect. If they keep a guy like a Ron Tannehill, Jim Caldwell took over for in Baltimore. He took over and helped out with Joe Flacco. They got to the Super Bowl just like that. I mean, he's just perfect for this guy. Caldwell would be ideal. He would settle this team down. You know, that would be a good eye-opening move. That would show me that Mike Vrabel is very secure with himself if they bring in a Jim Caldwell. Another big game. Okay. Jalen Hurts. I know they got the 1 seed and everything, but I'll say this. You know, he is grimacing every time he throws the football. He did play. They did beat the Giants, but Giants had a lot of backups on defense. I didn't see Kayvon Thibodeau's name pop it. That's their best pass rusher. I didn't see his name from the Giants pop up into the box score. Leonard Williams didn't play. They were holding out guys like that. Adoree Jackson. And this game was still 22-16. Now, in 2 weeks, can Jalen Hurts' shoulder be better? Hurts was 20 of 35, 229, a pick, a really bad pick, 3 sacks. Now, he only ran for 13 yards this game. But my thing is, they still got a lot of injuries. I know they got the 1 seed. They deserve it. They've been pretty much the best team most of the year in the NFC. Maybe 49ers are getting close to them. They may have some they're a little bit weak in the middle. And, you know, Dan Orlovsky made a good point today on Get Up. He says the truth of the matter is, well, they're strong at, they meaning the 49ers, where they're strong at offensively in the middle of the field with guys like Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, players like that. They got a running back, one of the best in space running backs in the game, Christian McCaffrey, where they're strong at, Philly's weak at, which is at linebacker, which is at middle of the field. So how healthy is Jalen Hurts? Nobody really knows that. You don't really know how healthy he really is. He did not throw a touchdown in this game. He did not run for a touchdown in this game. Bart Scott ran for that touchdown, you know. So I'll tell you what, they're going to have their hands full. Not to get too far ahead of myself, folks, but Dallas, I'll talk a little bit more about Dallas tomorrow. They looked awful. They're typical Dallas on the road. I get it. They're typical Dallas on the road. There's no other way to say it. There's no other way to put it. But Dallas has to play at Tampa next week. Tampa's got a lot of players that have been back. They planned better. You give Brady some time to throw, he's going to beat a team like Dallas. They're undisciplined on defense. They're undisciplined on offense. More interceptions, a pick 6 by Dak Prescott, another pick 6 by Dak Prescott. I think my early impression of that game, now I'm about to study it. I'm not giving you a prediction now, but my early impression of that game is like they won 19-3 the start of the season, Tampa over Dallas. Tampa will probably beat Dallas this time next week. I think they're going to beat Dallas. It's down in Tampa, and Dallas is Dallas's own worst enemy. They're just undisciplined. And by the way, people's wanting to talk to Dan Quinn about head coaching jobs. They got a game to play. So he's getting requests to talk about head coaching jobs, Dan Quinn. And now they got to prepare for Tom Brady. So that seems like a distraction in its own already. I think Tampa's probably going to beat them, And then Tampa would probably, very much likely, not unless the Giants upset Minnesota. And Minnesota, I don't think they will, but they could. They'll have to play at Philly. I think Tampa could go up there and beat Philly. If the game is close, which I expect it to be, do you really expect Jalen Hurts to sit in the pocket and make big throw at the big throw and match Tom Brady with the sore shoulder? That's a $64,000 question because we're never going to know how healthy he really is. My thing is he's probably not as healthy. And he's going to have to take checkdowns. He's going to have to rely on his other teammates. I don't think he could do it. I just don't think he could do it. Now, we'll see how they play. We'll see how Lane Johnson comes back. Maybe the defense takes over. They do got two of the better cornerback tandems in the league with James Bradbury and Darius Slay. They do have Dallas Goedert back. They can still get to the Super Bowl. But from what I seen last night, watching on Red Zone, because I was arguing with my dad back and forth. I said, man, I think we should take him on fantasy. He's like, man, I don't know. I think it's BS. Well, it turned out to be he only had 229 yards, no touchdowns passing, and he had no rushing yards hardly, and no rushing touchdowns. He's a shell of himself, folks. So how's the 49ers going to act in a big game situation? I don't know. I know one thing, by Green Bay losing, they got to play Seattle at home. That's a big win for the 49ers. They already know Seattle. You know Geno Smith is not going to play well. They're familiar with Geno Smith. They're going to outmuscle this team. They've got so many advantages on this team in the run and in the past. And Smith not being able to hit his guys downfield. It'll be played in Santa Clara instead of Seattle. That is a big – it's a big favorite towards the 49ers. Now, Seattle, the flip side, Seattle knows them. Seattle knows they do have holes in their secondary. They can hit them deep, especially if they get a guy like Swain or one of these off guys, maybe a Lockett, to hit them deep. Possibly, yeah. Going against a rookie, we'll see how that plays out. But I think that really helps the 49ers playing a team like Seattle in their first playoff game. How's that going to work out? I don't know. I do know one thing. I do know that the Eagles fans, they're going to say that they know, my man, Philly sports guy, but really he's worried. He's worried that they may pull him and put Gardner Minshew in there. That they may pull Hurts. Okay. So that's just some thoughts here. Also, Black Monday, I'm 2 for 2. So, and again, guys, I'll go into this later on as the week goes along. Ron Rivera, no word on Ron Rivera yet in Washington. That was one I thought they could go. Now, we've got some games this weekend, okay? Baltimore plays this weekend. John Harbaugh could still get fired. I still think that's a possibility. There's been a possibility that maybe Miami, they play Buffalo this weekend. There's some thought that maybe Stephen Ross wants to go after Jim Harbaugh, not Jim Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh's already talking to Denver. Denver's also asked to speak with Sean Payton. New Orleans who has his rights still, and then permission to do so. I think Denver's going to get one of them too. Denver's going to pay big money at Walmart. They're going to get one of them too. Okay? Lovie Smith, I predicted would be fired. He got fired. I think he wanted to go for 2 on that last play to kind of screw Houston out of the first-round pick. I don't blame him. I would have too. So he gets fired. Nothing about Texas. The Texans have had 3 coaches in 3 years. Okay? Cal McNair's kind of running things. He's the son of Bob McNair. You can tell. If he didn't have to sweat blood for that money, so he's paying off contract after contract after just 1 year. Texans are kind of a mess right now at the ownership spot. Okay. So Lovey gets fired. All right. Cliff Kingsbury, Pickles. Cliff Kingsbury was fired, and I predicted that he would be fired. And remember what I told you, even though he got a contract extension, that does not mean nothing in NFL. These owners will buy that stuff out. They will buy this out. And that's what he did. Mr. Michael Bidwell, the owner, he's bought out Kingsbury. Kingsbury's fired. The general manager who left on a medical leave, he's also resigned. So they're looking for a general manager also and a head coach. Pickles, I did hear that Cliff Kingsbury has moved back to Texas, and now he's opening up a techno club out of Dallas. I kid. Pickles says he don't like those techno geeks. So so far you got Kingsbury, you got Lovie Smith. That's 2 so far. Plus the Colts are looking for a coach, Carolina's looking for a coach, and Denver's looking for a coach. So that's 5, possibly 2 more. Possibly Ron Rivera, possibly Mike McDaniel out of Miami, and possibly John Harbaugh. Now, Cleveland's fired their defensive coordinator, Joe Woods. They've 25th, 27th against run defense. I just mentioned Titans fired their offensive coordinator, Todd Downey. Dean Pease has retired from Atlanta. Their defense, they're going to need a coordinator. So there's some job openings out there. You know, there's some job openings. Cliff Kingsbury, he's starting a techno music club in Dallas, Fort Worth. He's going to use some of all those millions of dollars. Plus Sean McVay, more talk has came about. He's going to evaluate his future in air quotes. I think he may step back a few years, take a TV job, unwind, make big TV money. There's 7 to 8 firings every year, guys. Every year in the NFL, he'll have his pick of the litter. Sean McVay will, kind of like John Gruden did. People asked, Bill Cowher to come back for years. They asked John Gruden to come back for years. They asked Jimmy Johnson after he left Dallas Cowboys to come back. He eventually comes back a few years later and coaches for the Dolphins. Bill Parcells leaves. He comes back. He takes a advisor role. He comes back to coaching with the Miami Dolphins. Then he goes to the Dallas Cowboys. So guys leave and come back. Urban Meyer, it didn't work out. And here's a stat here. This is something on these college coaches, and it hasn't been good as of late, I want to say. Let's see. Let's see. Okay, here it is. Jumping from college to head coach since 2000. Adam Schefter, Urban Meyer, 2-11 as a head coach in the NFL. Matt Rule, 11-27. Cliff Kingsbury, 28-37-1. He actually put Bill O'Brien in here. Bill O'Brien was above 500. He was 52-48. He wasn't that bad, Bill O'Brien. As a head coach, he's just not a good head coach and general manager. I prefer him as a coordinator. That's why I think New England will bring him back as a coordinator. I'll talk about New England tomorrow too, by the way. Chip Kelly, 26-21. That's not bad, but a lot of that fell off at the very end for Chip Kelly. Doug Marrone, 15-17. Greg Schiano, 11-21. He was terrible. That's the former Rutgers coach. Jim Harbaugh, listen to this, 44-19. That's why people want Jim Harbaugh. Plus, he had a Super Bowl appearance. Bobby Petrino, 3-10. Nick Saban, under 500, 15-17. And Steve Spurrier, 12-20. Butch Davis, 24-35. These are very good coaches in the collegiate level. Urban Meyer, national championship winner, Nick Saban, multiple national championship winners. And Jim Harbaugh, of course, he played in the NFL, 44-19. That's pretty good. Bill O'Brien coached several years in the NFL with the Patriots, 52-49. But you can see a lot of these guys. I mean, Urban Meyer was awful, man. I mean, Urban Meyer, Cliff Kingsbury. I didn't realize he was 28-37. Had one really good stint there, just a little half a season last year, and kind of fell off ever since. Joe Judge, he was not a college guy. He was a special teams guy, but he didn't do well. Sean McVay can't win without an all-star team. Yeah, we'll find out. I do think that McVay will probably step down, and we still haven't heard nothing on Ron Rivera. I'll get a lot of that stuff tomorrow. We'll talk about tonight's game. At last I checked, Georgia was up by 7. But either way, I'll watch a little bit of this. I'll be back on tomorrow. Thank you all for coming on the program. Same time, same place, 7 p.m. Central Time here on Sports Scope.